Thank you for joining us for another episode of Thank You for You,
where every story matters. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Thank You for You. My name is K10.
And I'm Whitney.
And today we have a special guest for you guys.
Yes, today we will be hearing a story from Camille, one of my very best friends. So she's going to be talking about her personal experience about losing her boyfriend, a close significant other. And what we really want to share her to share her story, because losing someone who plays that major role in your life and so suddenly, it's a very tough thing to go through. So we really want to be able to learn from her experience and hope that it will help some of you guys who are listening.
Awesome. Hi, Camille.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Doing awesome.
Yes, we're doing good. So thanks, Camille, for agreeing to share your story today. So we're ready to get started whenever you feel comfortable.
Okay, no problem. So he wasn't only my boyfriend. Like, this was my first love, and we met in like the mid 2000s, around 2004, 2003, something like that. We originally met online. It wasn't a dating site or anything like that. I was looking for a classmate that had moved to a city over, and they had like the same name. And so I sent him a message and was like, "Hey, are you this person?" And he was like, "No, I'm not, but it's nice to meet you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And we just started chatting. And, he said something. I was like, "Oh, yeah, I don't talk to guys like you. Nice meeting you. Have a great life, whatever, go on." And, it just really bothered him. So what he ended up doing was like making up a fake identity and messaging me back. And I was still like, "Hey, yeah." However he reinvented himself, I still wasn't interested. But I was like, but I'm going to make a new friend. So we chatted for a few months, and then it just died off. We really didn't have a whole lot to talk about. And a few months later, I went to the state fair, and I remember I was eating a candied apple, and I turned around and I saw this man, and I was like, he looks familiar. And I don't know if it was just like he looks familiar. I was like, I know that man, and I immediately knew who he was. But I knew that I wasn't going to go and just, I never met him in person. And so that night when I got home, I sent him a message, and I was like, "Hey, were you at the state fair tonight?" And he was like, "Yeah." How did you know? Because it was just really weird. And I do weird stuff like that. Like, I recognize people and they don't know who I am. And so he's like, "How did you know?" "Yeah, I was there. How did you know?" And I told him. He's like, "Oh, okay." And that's just like where our relationship began. And we started chatting, and we talked fairly often and started talking on the phone. And yeah, it just grew from there. He ended up like becoming like my best friend. Like, he was someone that I could talk to about anything at any time. But there was a huge age difference between us. And I was still in high school at the time. So it all had to be a secret. But when I was getting ready to go off to undergrad, I was trying to decide where to go to school. And I was looking at two places here in state. And I had opportunity to go out of state. And I remember him being one of the people who's like, if you had the opportunity to leave, leave. Go on and don't be afraid to go. And I don't know if I had a lot of people in my corner saying that there was nobody saying not to go, but there weren't many people saying like, yes, go, go take advantage of this opportunity. And that was just like, that was huge. And so he became like this very supportive figure in my life throughout my undergraduate experience. Like I had a very tough time my first year, especially my first semester, and I wanted to leave. And he asked me, said, well, if you leave, where do you want to go? And I was like, I don't know. I don't want to go home. I don't know where I want to go. I just know I'm not happy here. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but I just know he was able to just like be there for me and support me throughout that difficult time until I was able to make friends and connections there. And it was just awesome because I know if I would have told, my family members, like, hey, I'm not happy here, they would have came and picked me up the next day. And I don't think that would have been the best move to make. So, I'm always very thankful for that.
So when you moved to out of the state for your undergrad, you guys are still just in a long distance relationship, just far away, but you guys are still committed to each other. You guys dated throughout all of college, right?
Yeah, we dated all throughout college. We were committed to each other. I probably was more committed to him than he may have been to me. But yeah, it was long. Just like, our majority of our relationship, especially in the beginning, was long distance. So we were together for 12 years. And I don't think we lived in the same city until, I think we lived in the same city for like 2 years. Throughout that 12 years, 2 or 3 years. And there was like a gap in between that time because I came back to Arkansas, moved away for a couple years and came back. And then he died like a year and a half later after I moved back. But yeah, it was, it was long distance. It was real good at the beginning. Like I was just, enjoying life. And then there was some reality came hitting in. We had some hard stuff hit us. Yeah, it was rough, but we once say we worked through it. We did work through it. Like I was just more accepting of things that I probably wouldn't be accepting of now, but it's just like that was my first love. I was willing to deal with certain things because of how much I care for him.
So
and
before things started getting bad or rocky, like you were saying, how was it before that? Like what kind of things would you do? Did he like come into town while you were in school, or how did you guys navigate being away from each other?
Oh yeah, so he came to visit me very often in the beginning when I first moved away. Well, even before I left to go off to college, when I was still in the state, he would come like every weekend, every other weekend to come visit me, and we would go and just hang out and, go take walks, go out to eat, whatever. Just, enjoy each other's company. And then when I went to college, he came there and visited. My friends met him. I actually got to learn the city because of him. Because when he came, I didn't have a car. And we would just drive around the city and, get to learn the places and different things. We traveled around. I know we went to Savannah and Charleston. And I know after my first year, he actually came and picked me up and drove me home. And that's actually the first time he met my families when he dropped me off from my freshman year of college. And that was interesting.
Interesting how?
Like I said, when we drove, he was older. So when we drove up, my brother was standing outside. My brother is older than me. And when I was just like, when I saw my brother there, I was like, oh crap, my brother is standing outside. I do not know how this is about to go. My brother was real cool, but my brother originally thought that he was there for somebody else and not for me. And so when he put it together, he was just shocked. But I mean, there was really nothing he could say. I was technically an adult and on my own. So, yeah.
And how did their relationship evolve? Your family?
So with I remember my mom telling me one time in the kitchen, she was like, I don't approve, but if you're happy, I'm happy. And so I don't think my family was never really excited about it, but they were cordial and, weren't nasty about anything. And I mean, and my family also understands like how I am. Like, even if you don't agree, that's not going to make me not do anything. Mm-hmm. They knew they didn't have control over me in that way.
Did they know that when you guys first met that you were still in high school? Or
I don't think so. I don't even know if they know that now. I don't think so, but I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm kind of, because if people did know and people, brought that up, that would have changed the whole trajectory of my life. And I'm glad that if people did know, they did make a huge deal out of it, because that would have been a big mess for everybody. And so, like, I have a friend who was just like, that should have never happened. But it did happen. And I think, it helped shape me into the person that I am. I don't feel like I'm a bad person. And if, people did try to do something to change that, I do feel like my life would have been different in a more negative way than, how it turned out.
Because he would have no longer been being in your life, you think?
He wouldn't have been in my life. Yeah, he wouldn't no longer be in my life. It had the positive influence that he did have. And then also, if we did get together and, the law got involved or anything like that just would have been a totally different situation for both of our lives. And, I would have been in the system in, some way. And that could have had a very negative impact on me.
Right.
Especially in the views of, in the eyes of other people. Because people treat you differently when you go through certain stuff. So like now when I share the story about our relationship and how young I was when it started, I think people's views on me change. Because they're just like, why? And, some people's like, oh, that's gross.
People actually say those things?
I remember in college, like, this guy, he wasn't my friend at that time, but we're cool now. And I remember telling him, and he said something like that, and I remember it really hurt me. And at that point, I was just like, I'm not going to share this with other people. Because, because it hurt. It hurt. And I knew what I had been through, and I knew, like, how he helped me and how this person wasn't crapping my life, he wasn't providing me with anything. So to have that judgment from people, I didn't want to have to deal with that. And I think even with, when he was alive, I wouldn't tell people. I would be very vague about, the age difference and stuff like that. They knew he was older, but I wouldn't say exactly how old, just because I didn't want that judgment.
That makes sense. Yeah. So while you were not in, back home when you were in school, you said you guys traveled together. He came and visited you. He helped you just make the decision to stay in school. How did the relationship evolve after that? Earlier you were going into when things started to become a little bit more difficult. What ways was the relationship becoming difficult?
Well, it came hard just because, like, I found out that I wasn't the only special person in his life. And so I remember first finding out, like, I was hurt. And I actually, like, confronted him about it in person. And, it hurt me that I wasn't the only person, but it hurt me more that he just wasn't honest with me about it. And the whole thing about being honest with me about stuff was a issue like throughout the rest of our relationship. Because I'm just like, it might suck, but I'd rather for you to be honest with me than a lie to me, or to lie by just like omitting stuff, because I really care for him. And even though there was a lot of hurt there, I cared for him so much, like there was going to be, I don't think there was really much that he could do to just like totally turn me off and away from him and not want to have some type of relationship with him.
So how did you find out he was even being unfaithful, or that you weren't the only person?
He butt down me. And I'm the type of person, I'm an observer. I'm not one of the people, I see something, I pop off. Nope. I sat there and listened with my headphones on for I was probably on that phone for like an hour and a half to 2 hours, because I remember I butt down me on my way to class. I went to class, I kept an earbud in throughout class, had my phone on mute, participated in class. I remember answering a question in class. Class got over, took the shuttle back to my apartment, and some things went down, and I remember I got real upset that I heard some things, and I was really upset, and I started crying. And then I think when I walked in my building, like the reception changed and the phone cut off. And so I just like, I'm not very reactionary. Like I was like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? And at that time there were like cheap college flights. And so this was silly. This was real crazy. But I called him a few hours later. I was like, hey, I think I want to come visit this weekend. What do you think about me flying in? He was like, oh, yeah, come on. I was like, okay, cool. Give me a ticket. Got me a ticket, flew there, and, confronted him about what happened. He tried to deny it at first, and I was like, hey, I heard everything. And, said some things I heard. It was like, oh, okay. And we had a long talk. And I think I came back the next day. But that was hard. But it wasn't enough to like make me walk away. And I know some people just like they'll never understand that. I don't even know if I really understand it, but that's how deeply involved I was. And like, and I tell people all the time, like, it was not the most healthy relationship. But it wasn't all bad. It wasn't all good. And like I said, it helped shape me into who I am today.
And so how did that happening alter your relationship with him, and who you are as a person, like leaving college and the relationship you guys had after college? Once you became a working adult and you lived in Birmingham and Louisiana and Texas before you moved back in the same city as he was, but you guys still kept your relationship going. How did that alter it, and how did you guys move past that?
I really don't know if he ever really moved past it. But I think it was actually like more on his end because he did not think that he really could tell me the truth. And the thing is, most of the time I knew what the truth was. I probably should have been a private detective. And he told me that. He was like, you probably should have been a detective, because I would find out stuff and, I'll be gathering my evidence and just pull it out when it needs to, if I ever did pull it out. Like, I don't think, I've never used my evidence as a form of getting back, I don't think. But I had it. So it was shaky. Like, we were on and off a lot when I moved. There were times when he let me down when I really, like, expected for him to do something for me. But then there were other times where, like, he was the person I knew that I could rely on. like, he was my best friend. Like, I could talk to him about anything and everything, and didn't hesitate to do that. But one thing that bothered me is I don't think he felt the same way about me, and that was kind of hurtful. But throughout the moves, like, you know, at certain times we'll be, you know, strong when I would move to a place. You know, he came to visit me everywhere that I lived. But when I was in Houston, I have no idea why we weren't as close as we had been in the past, but we had been talking, and I met somebody else. And when he found out, it did not go well. He was hurt. And it didn't really make a whole lot of sense because of what he had done in the past. And it's like, you know, how can you be so upset about this? But then it makes things like men are a lot more sensitive about stuff. Women take a lot more from men than men will take from women, if they'll take anything. And so, and that might be like real sexist to say. I probably shouldn't say that, but
from
like,
your observations in life.
My observation in life, and with my personal experience, like, he was just real tender about some stuff that he shouldn't have been, and that really made our relationship. It wouldn't, because it was already rocky before, but that was a really tough time. And after that, he told me, he said, our relationship would never be the same, and it never really was the same after that. But we still stayed involved, but it was a lot more rocky. You know, we stayed in touch. We still hang out and do things. Like I said, when I moved, he would come visit, but it was never the same after that. Like, he just viewed me differently. But I still viewed him the same. I still saw him as my best friend. And I remember telling him numerous times, like, you know, you are my best friend. Like, you are my number one. And he really was. It was like he was number one in my life. And I meant that. And I think he knew that. And I think that's kind of where it became like, it was like unhealthy. And like, you know, because in your life, I feel like you should be number one. Besides, you know, whatever God you believe in. And that wasn't the case. So it was hard. It was hard. But we got through it. You know, when I moved back, we ended up connecting and really just being good friends. Before he ended up passing on.
So how was that reconnection? Like, how did you get back to being good friends better than where you were?
So he ended up getting sick. So when I graduated from college, he ended up losing his insurance. He didn't have insurance for a while until the Affordable Care Act came. And when the Affordable Care Act came, he was able, you know, to go to the doctor and get there, get that help he needed. And it made a huge difference. And I remember him saying, he's like, if it wasn't for the ACA, like, my doctor told me that I wouldn't be here. And, you know, we just really connected after that. And I remember, like, we would go walking and stuff and just talk and, you know, talk about different things. He had started a business, and I was actually helping him. He had a cleaning business. I was actually go help him clean different buildings and things like that. And, you know, we tried to just have a good time. And my payment was like a Subway sandwich or something. I was just happy to spend time with him, you know, and be with my best friend. And then his prognosis got bad, but you know, they were treating him, and during that time, I just feel like we got close. And I remember one day, like, us being in the car, we were going to Popeye's Chicken, and I remember asking him, I was like, you know, how many how many girlfriends do you have? Because we had just got to this point where we could be honest. He finally got it. That like, I really just want him to be honest with me, that I wasn't going to just, be upset or hurt. Like, we are there. It's like, how many girlfriends do you have? And he was like, what you talking about? I said, how many girlfriends you have? And he was like, I think she said 2. I said, well, let me rephrase my question. How many girls think that you are their man? That's how you gotta, put stuff to a player or somebody think they and and I, after that, when I said like that, like, it just really like the mood, and we were just really able to talk and have a good time. And that day he told me, he was like, I know like things are different between us, but I can't imagine you not in my life, in some capacity. And I told like, I feel the same. And we went on and ate our chicken or whatever and hung out. And, it was probably 2 or 3 months later when he passed away unexpectedly. And I'm happy now to know that we had that honest conversation. I wish it would have came earlier so we could have had that bond before. Because at that time, I do think that, I always felt like he was my best friend. I think at that time, he considered me as one of his best friends, really. And I don't know if he felt that way before, but then he did. And so, I'm glad we got to have the opportunity and really get close over those last few months. It was a blessing. It's a blessing.
Were you able to have that conversation because you had gotten to a point where you were able to just fully accept it? Or like, what led to that really open conversation that changed things for you guys?
No, I think it was him, and I think it was him dealing with that illness and really, coming to terms with, with himself and, his relationships with people. Because he wasn't the same person that he had been before. He had gotten really sick. He didn't have the energy that he used to have. Like, we definitely couldn't go on those walks anymore. It wasn't me, because honestly, like, I was there after that first time that I got that butt call. I knew, just like, I just need you to be honest with me about stuff. It wasn't, that's all I needed that whole time. It just took him 8 years to get there.
So what about towards the end, when you said things changed, like you said he passed a few months after that conversation, what were things like in your relationship towards the end before he passed?
I think we were in a pretty good place. I was actually getting ready to move. Or I did move, but I remember I think around the time we had a conversation when he came over one night and we were watching TV and the Roosevelts were on PBS. And we were sitting up there watching, and it was like late. I had to go to work. I said, well, I'm going to bed. You can just hang out here and watch Roosevelts. I'm going to bed. And he felt like I was kicking him out. I was like, I'm not kicking you out. Like, you can stay. You always supposed to stay. I just can't stay up all night. And so he's like, no, I'm going to leave. And so I remember walking him to the door, and we gave each other a hug. And I'll never forget that hug. Like, that was one of the best hugs. And we both, like, I didn't want him to go. He didn't want to leave at that moment. But we had, I had to go to sleep. He had to go. It was just like moments like that happened, that I'll never forget. But things were good. Like, I remember I saw him a few days before he passed, and he had left something in my apartment. I was returning it to him. And I mean, he was just really, I do remember him being like tired that day. And I think I was just like really full of energy, and he wasn't giving me that energy back. But I think just because he was ill. And we chatted, and I remember hugging him that day, because we always hug, before we left, because I was a big hugger at the time. I don't know if I'm a big hugger now, but we hugged, and I remember saying bye. And it wasn't the usual end to like our time together. But I was just like, I'm not gonna take that personally, maybe something's going on. And I had got that way with him, like, if he's not as energetic as I am, like, I'm gonna try not to take that personally. I mean, it wasn't a tough time. We had before we had that conversation going to Popeyes. A few months before that, we did have like some rocky times. So I remember he had gave me a ring. It wasn't a promise ring or anything like that, but I had just gotten like real irritated, like with stuff that was going on. And remember, I went to the house to give him back the ring, and when the way that he looked when he came down the stairs, like he was sick. And I was like, oh, I cannot do this. I
give him back the ring.
I can't give him back the ring at that moment because he was sick. Now, I did end up giving him back the ring, I think like a week later. And I remember my mom being like, fool, you don't never give jewelry back.
How did he react to that?
When I gave him back the ring?
Yeah.
He was hurt.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, I really I want to give this to you. And I was just like, I never, when he gave it to me, it didn't feel right when he gave it to me. Because I think I actually found it. It was like, hey, this came out your pocket or whatever. And he's like, no, I got this for you. And it just never felt right to me. And I don't know what was going on time to make me want to give that, but I gave him that back. I gave him a decorative license plate back. I put all the bag. I was really in my feelings.
I don't want anything.
I don't want anything. I gave him all that stuff back. And I think me giving him that stuff back was like, okay, I'm done trying to make this a romantic relationship. And so, a few months later when we went and had that Popeyes run, it really was. I think he understood, hey, is she really is here because she cares about me as a person, and she really is, she sees me as her best friend, as my friend. And we were able to connect on that. And it was no longer trying to force a relationship that just wasn't meant to be, because I think we both knew that in the end, we couldn't be together romantically.
Are you saying that because he was ill? You think you guys felt that way, or?
No, not because he's ill, just because he still had other people. He still had another woman.
So the conversation at Popeyes ended in just you guys would be really good friends then? Not so was that when you guys realized it was just best that you just didn't carry on romantically?
I don't know that was ever really stated. And I'm just now I'm just thinking back on I'm just coming to that realization now. I think that's what happened. That wasn't anything that was just stated. That's just where we
how the energy shifted, kind of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I gave him back that stuff, because me giving him back that stuff was not hey, I don't want you in my life. It was just for me to move on, I don't need these daily reminders of you.
Got it. Okay. So tell us about the last time that you saw him.
Yeah, last time I saw him, I was at a conference about tobacco usage, which is really interesting now because now I'm working with tobacco cessation. It's always, life comes full circle in so many ways.
Synchronicities.
Yes. That it was not what I was planning on doing, but I had went there, we got out early, and I remember texting hey, I got out this conference early, do you want to hang out or whatever? And so I didn't hear back from him immediately, but he said yeah, and I was like, okay, I got something to bring you. So I went over there to take him what he had left at my house, and I just remember we just stood outside and talked for a while, and he talked to me about, some kids that are really important in his life. And there's this particular little girl. And I told her, I said, you really love that little girl. Like, I could tell because, like, you light up like that's your favorite, your favorite person out of all of us. And it was just a real, like, conversation between good friends, just about life. And he was finally able to talk to me about the other people in his life that he wasn't able to talk to me, the years prior, because the years prior he thought that I would be mad, and I was never going to be mad because I just want to be there for him and let him know, like, you can talk to me about anything. Like I said, but his energy was different that day. And I just remember giving him that hug, and it wasn't like the hugs like we usually had. And, told him goodbye, went on by my business. And that was a Thursday. Didn't talk to him that Friday. Tried to reach out to him that Saturday. It was college football season, and so we would talk to each other during the games and, like, talk about, what was happening and stuff. And I think my TV was one of our TVs was ahead. I think his TV was ahead. So he would always, like, a play ahead of me. And, it was just good fun. That's what we did. And I didn't hear from him that day. But he would do that sometimes. He would just go ghost, and I was like, oh, okay. And I think that Sunday I probably reached out to him one time in that evening, but that was it. And I didn't hear from him. So I remember that Monday, I told my mom, I was like, if I don't hear from him, I'm going to kill him when I see him. I mean, I hope everything's okay, but if I don't hear from him, and everything's okay, I'm going to kill him. And she was like, yeah, that's a mess. And I was like, yeah. And so that Tuesday, I was going home from work, and I work at a hospital. And I was like, oh, I hadn't heard from him. I was like, well, let me go by the house and see, make sure everything's okay. And halfway there, I was like, well, let me check Facebook first to check his sister's Facebook page to make sure that everything's okay. Because if he's in the hospital, I don't want to be so far away from the hospital. When I was just right there. So I pulled over, looked on Facebook, and saw these messages saying, sorry for your loss. Sorry to hear about your brother. And I was like, what? And I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, he's gone. And she's like, what you mean he gone? I said, he's dead. She said, no, he's not dead. That can't be true. And I was like, Mom, people don't lie about this, I know social media and the internet, people tell lies, but they don't lie about this. This is real. And I remember going home and just trying to find out what happened. I sent his sister a friend on Facebook, but we weren't friends at the time, and on there, and just trying to find out, and I couldn't find out any information. And later that night, I was staying with a friend at the time when I told her, and it's so interesting because that particular friend is not comfortable with death at all. It's one of the scariest people that you ever meet. But I'm glad that I was staying with her at the time because she allowed me to, like, she was there, and she was there when I was able to, like, let me talk about him. I think part of the time she was able to let me talk about him is because she was so scared about death, so she didn't know what to say. And I think with other people, like, they trying to comfort you so much by talking that they don't allow you to say a lot. And because of fear, like, I was allowed to talk. So that was a blessing for me to be staying with her at the time and not by myself. And then I remember late that night, I was talking to Whitney. And I was like, Whitney, I don't know what happened. I can't find any information. I don't know what Whitney did, but Whitney found an obituary. And I think I found out that the funeral was it the next day?
Yes.
The funeral was the next day. And
I'm just a better detective.
Whitney is the most resourceful.
Yeah, she's come through with me a few times. When my stuff was clicking, she was there for me. Sometimes you gotta pull your resources together to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
I found out that he had actually died early that Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. So it was 2 days. He had been dead for 2 days before I found out, and that crushed me. And so, I took off of work. My mom and my brother came from my hometown, which is an hour away, and went to the funeral with me. And I told them they didn't have to come. Also, the funeral wasn't that next day; it was the day after, because I remember the next day I went to go view the body. And y'all, when I pulled over to look at Facebook, I was actually like a block away from the funeral home.
Wow.
I was in walking distance to his body when I found out that he had passed away.
You just didn't know where he was.
I didn't know where he was, and he was right there. Did not know. And so, yeah, my family came with me, went to the funeral. I, had the opportunity to talk to his family at the funeral, and that was good for me. In a way, because I had met some of his family before, but I wasn't close to them. Like, I never hung out with them, and then like I was still, like, even though he had a relationship for 12 years, he wasn't a secret to my family, and I wasn't a secret completely to his family, but his family didn't know about me totally, I don't think. But it was an experience.
So how did you interact with his family? What was it? It was just like a friend who heard that he passed, or what was that interaction like?
You talking about at the funeral or just like in life?
At the funeral, or the viewing, or the funeral?
Oh, at the funeral. No, I just went up there, gave him a hug and said I'm sorry or whatever. And I remember him and my daughter had some interactions from, I think I interacted with her the most when I would go to the house. And it was never long, like, just like she'll greet me at the door and we'll speak or whatever. But she knew that we were close. And I remember hugging her. And now that I think about it, like hugging her, like it was like one of those hugs that I had got from him. Because I didn't get that, the last hug I had with him wasn't as strong as, the hugs before. But that day at the funeral, like when we hugged, there was something there. And that meant something to me. So, yeah.
And so after the funeral, and how did you cope with losing somebody that was such a big part of your life for about like 13 years, when you were in love with, and losing them so suddenly? How did you, once the funeral's done and the repast is done, how did you move forward in coping?
It was hard. Like, I wasn't able to sleep. Like, I would go to bed, I would wake up at 3 a.m. And so since I was up, I was like, well, let me go to the gym. So I started going to the gym at, 3:30 in the morning and working out. Didn't lose any weight. I'm kind of upset. I just stated I didn't lose any weight. But I was going to the gym at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to work out. But like while I was working out, I was listening to all of these like love songs that didn't make it any better. That was not good. I was just really sad. And I know like about 2 or 3 weeks after he passed, I was in my office. And the dean of the department where my office is, he came to my door and he was like, is everything okay? Like, you have not been yourself. And I told him, like, no, I lost somebody really close to me. So, my demeanor was very different. But I ended up traveling to Cuba a couple months later. And I ended up rooming with somebody. And I told her about what happened. And that was good. Like, I always talked about him. Like, I never, like, shut down. I kept doing things, so I wouldn't get totally depressed. I was depressed, I don't know if I was depressed. I was grieving. And one of the things that was tough, because I wanted to be close to people who were close to him too. So I was trying to reach out to his family. And some members of his family weren't as receptive as others. And that hurt. But one person who was his daughter, and his daughter and I went to lunch one day. And you know, that was awesome. We went to lunch, we ate, and then we ended up sitting in the car in front of the house for like 2 hours just talking about him, sharing stories. And that meant a lot to me because I really wanted to talk to somebody who had a close relationship with him like I did. Not the same relationship, but just somebody else who also loved him. You know, knew him for all his flaws, but loved him through all that stuff. And I needed that. And I had people in my life who didn't understand why I wanted to talk to his daughter, talk to his family member, you know, things like that. But that's what I needed for closure. Because I think that's the part that I was most hurt about. I mean, I was sad that he had passed on, but he was really sick, and I just couldn't see, because of who he was, I couldn't see him dealing well with, like, his illness. So, like, I understood, like, you know, he's no longer suffering. And it was easier for me to accept that. What was hardest for me was not having that connection with other people who love him like I did. So I ended up going to counseling. I used the employee assistance program in my job to, you know, deal with that grieving process. And I remember the first time I went, I wrote down on the paper, asked, like, why are you here? And I put the loss of a boyfriend. And while I was talking to my counselor and I was telling her what happened, she said, hold on. She said, so he passed away? He died? I said, yeah. She said, oh, I thought you had, like, she said, loss of a boyfriend. She thought I meant like we had broken up. And I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. That's not what this is about. Like,
this is real different.
This is different.
Right. It's a total different notes you need to be writing down.
Right. And I think that speaks to, like, how my demeanor was about it. Like, I was not totally distraught. I was just hurting about other stuff. And going to the counselor and being able to talk about it and talk through my feelings and doing exercises was very therapeutic. Like, it helped me. I noticed a change.
How long did you go for?
I probably went for 2 to 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, you have these free sessions, but you only have so many free sessions. And I wasn't about, you know, I'm cheap, so I wasn't trying to pay for no sessions either. But and thanks, I had like a real cool person. She worked with me. She helped me out.
Was there an exercise that she gave you, or certain exercises that were more helpful than others while you were coping and managing the loss?
Yeah, so there were a few exercises. There was one exercise where she told me to write certain statements. So one was, right now, I'm sorry for such, you know, whatever. And I was to write, I forgive you for whatever. And then the last was, I want you to know. And, you know, just write as many statements to go under each one of those. And that was very helpful. Like, I didn't think it would be, but it really was. And then another time she gave me was to write him a letter, just writing about all my feelings out about him. And at the end, I was supposed to say goodbye. And so I wrote the letter. And I remember going there and I was sitting on the couch and she was asking about, so I wrote the letter. I said, but I cannot write goodbye. I can't write goodbye. I don't want to tell him goodbye. Because I feel like if I wrote goodbye, that means I was telling him goodbye out my life. And I never want to say goodbye and have him out my life. And, you know, she's funny. She said, no, it's not about, you know, saying goodbye to my life. You know, it's about saying goodbye and, like, releasing all that stuff. And I was like, I can't do it. And I never did. I never wrote down goodbye because I felt like by doing that, I was erasing him, erasing all those 12 years. And I'm not doing that. Like, he had a huge impact on my life. And I don't regret any of it. And that's one thing that he told me a few times throughout our relationship, you know, from early on. Like, I don't want you to resent me. I don't want you to feel like I ever held you back by being with me. And I always told him, I was like, you never held me back. Like, I never stayed close by to be with you. Like, I went away for college twice. I went out the country for, months at a time. I lived in other states. Like, I made the choice to do that. Like, you did not hold me back. That, don't be worried about that. I don't resent you. And I never did. I don't resent him. I don't regret anything that happened. That's what my story is supposed to be. Mm. And, for anybody that feels like, well, that shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have been like that. Well, it did. It's not reality. And, deal with it. Like, to say what woulda, shoulda, coulda happened, this is what happened. I don't see the point in saying that it shouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. What good does that do?
I agree with you 100%. So how long ago, as of today, how many years has it been since he passed?
It will be 3 years in September.
Wow. Have you ever said goodbye? Do you feel like he's still with you, or where are you at now with?
Yeah, he's still with me. So there was an instance early on where we were, having our adventures and we got attacked by some ladybugs. And I mean, like, they swarmed us in the vehicle. And like a couple weeks after that, like, he had a really bad accident in that vehicle, but he was fine. And he told me that, like, there were still ladybugs in the seal of, like, the trunk area. So probably a few weeks after he passed, or after the funeral, a few weeks to a month, I was in Northwest Arkansas at a conference, and a ladybug landed on my windshield. And something just like a calm came over me and made me feel like that he was there. Like, that was a sign that he was there with me. So now whenever I see like a single ladybug somewhere, like, I know I have a picture of one that was here in my bedroom. And then sometimes I'll see one in my kitchen. Like, I know that's him with me.
That's pretty dope. That's awesome. So what about... go ahead. Go ahead.
But right before she saw that ladybug in her car that first time, she was just thinking, and I only know this because I know Camille.
How you know this? No,
but you were on your way up there, and you were like just thinking, like, oh, I wish if he was alive, you would have wanted him to come.
Yeah, I would. Exactly. That's so true. Like,
and as soon as she thought that ladybug appeared, and that's when we were like, oh,
he's here with me. Like, he's here with me. So yeah, I forgot about that. That's so true.
What were you thinking?
So on the way up there, because it was so close by, it was like overnight trip, and everything was paid for because I was going for work. I was like, I would have told him to come on with me right up here, and he would have been happy to. That's one of the places where we had gone on one of our road trips before. Mm-hmm. And I was like, shoot, he would have been here with me if he was still here. And not too long later, that ladybug showed up, and I was like, oh, okay, he's showing me he is here with me. And so that just made me feel better, because I was feeling down that I wasn't able to experience that trip with him.
That's so cool. Like, he's like, I'm with you, girl. Don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because like, even like a week before he passed away, I had gone to a wedding in Houston, and I think he had surgery a few weeks before. And so I didn't invite him to come, but after he was like, he's like, oh, I should have went. I was like, yeah, like, you should have. Like, we would have had a good time. And, it was just like a missed opportunity. And so, going on that other trip in Arkansas, it was like, oh, you would have been here. And he was like, yeah, I am here with you.
I love that.
Me too.
So, have you been able to date, or what have your relationships been like, if you've had any? Well, I know you have, because obviously, but like, how's that been since he passed?
Like, I never went out like searching for a relationship at all. Like, I kind of lost my way for a minute right after he passed. Mm-hmm. But I got my mind back on right. But like dating, it wasn't really a big deal for me. Like I wasn't really concerned about it. Wasn't really interested. Wasn't really, wouldn't meet nobody. I never really met anybody. So I wasn't looking for anybody. And then I decided to go on a trip with my friend Whitney and ended up meeting somebody that I was like, I'm specifically not looking for this type of person. And what did I end up falling for? A person I was not looking for. So
that's usually how that works. They say never for that exact reason.
That's so true. That's so true.
That's happened to me.
Yeah, that is what happened to Whitney.
That is happened to Whitney. And we trying to draw me into the same situation.
See, neither one of y'all learned, so we better learn.
Well, and to set this recording straight, I didn't try to draw you in, Camille. I was like, no.
Whitney said what you're not going to do is make my name.
Oh, recording, right?
My name.
Okay, it was not intentional. It just happened.
So did you have like any troubles, like, falling for your new person at all? Like, were you, was it hard for you to fall in love again?
Yeah.
I am definitely a lot more cautious about falling as hard as I did for my first love. Like, I'm definitely a lot more guarded and hard to break through to. And I mean, my guy would tell you that. He's like, you making stuff a lot more different what it has to be. Like, with this how I am now. So it did make me a lot more guarded with my heart. Just because I was so
open.
Open and just like so into him. And it was too much. I'm just like, I really don't ever want to be that way again. Mm-hmm. But, I'm working on it.
So to kind of like give her overall, like, what advice would you give to someone who has recently lost, like a true love in their life or a significant other?
And actually, I'll add on to that, Whitney, because when she was talking earlier about the exercises in therapy, I was thinking about people who even break up with people and they never quite get closure. That person, they no longer communicate with that person, so it's not necessarily a death, but someone that they can't get that closure.
Just a great loss of love.
What kind of advice would you give people?
And you brought up closure because getting closure was something that was always really important to me. And that was something I was always searching for with him, is to get closure with the situation. And I never did, and that's why I could never break away from him. Mm. But the main thing is just like, don't shut down and be open to talking to somebody about it. Like the thing that helped me out was going into therapy and talking to a professional about it and being open to it. Because I feel like a lot of times, people in my community being like African Americans, are not really open to therapy. Mm-hmm. And that hurts us. It really hurts us. Like, I've had people in my family who have held on to stuff for a long time and it showed up in other ways. And if they had just had the opportunity to talk about it with somebody, then they wouldn't have had to go through a lot of pain and turmoil. And so, like, my grieving process, the tough part of my grieving process really didn't last too long. It was maybe 6 months where I was really just like sad and depressed. Mm-hmm. But like, he's still with me every day. I talk about him all the time, with friends and family. So that's,
do you think that's important? Like, not acting like they're not.
Oh yeah, that's very important.
Like keeping them alive, like talking about it and stuff like that. Yes,
definitely. Mm-hmm. Like, and I, when he passed, I said, he's gone, but he will never be forgotten. And, I was just telling somebody today about, our relationship that I hadn't told before. It's like I said, like, my relationship with him is a huge part of making me out of the person I am today. Mm-hmm. And I'm not ashamed of it. I am kind of guarded about it because of the judgment, but then I just have to push that to the side and just be like, it is what it is.
So it sounds like, you know, finding the right kind of help that you need to cope and then find the closure, but then also not pushing it away and pretending it didn't happen. Like, because I could imagine that would lead to, you know, more anguish also, as well as like not coping properly, like pretending, like I'm thinking of like bad breakups or even I guess in the case of a death, but you know,
don't
continue.
hold on to the negative stuff. Like, let it out. Like, you know, in the case of a bad breakup, you gotta let that stuff out, because if you hold on to it, it's gonna show up in other ways on the outside, and nobody needs that in their life.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna carry over to other relationships. Right, and it can even affect your health.
Right.
And certain, many different parts of your body. So, stress and depression, anxiety, and all of that. So, but thanks so much, Camille, for sharing this story. We definitely realize this is a very personal story.
Yes.
But so many people deal with this, and we never. Sometimes we can lose someone and be like, I wish it was just somebody I could talk to who went through this. And that is the purpose of Thank You For You, is providing almost like a library of stories for people to look to for reference and guidance. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yes,
thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. I really appreciate it. Like I said, it's hard to share, but I know it's important. And at the time, it was, when he was alive, it was hard to share about what was going on. But now I'm just like, hey, it is what it is. So thank you.
Oh, awesome. I know a lot of people will find value in this, so we appreciate it. Thank you so much for being you and for sharing your story.
If you enjoyed this week's podcast, please help us spread this story by
subscribing however you're listening, rating this podcast, and commenting and following on our social media.
And thank you for you.